Hi, uh, I welcome to the fireside chat this evening in India and at various time zones around the world. I'll start with a little brief introduction background on SMR and MRSI, MRS in particular, because that's the platform we are hosting this on. So a couple of lines. Hosted by MRSI, Market Research Society of India. It's a not-for-profit autonomous market research industry association formed in 1988, a long time back. Marketing, social research users, analytics, KPOs, tech partners, consulting firms, all of them use a lot of consumer insights, and these are all members of MRSI. And we are thankful for this industry association that builds the data engine of the future and supports it. And essentially MRSI aims to guide, encourage, uphold high standards of professionalism on this data and research industry, instills a code of conduct that we all try to follow, and that's how the professionalism and the development of the industry has been built. Just a context on today. So SMR, which is the Global Association of Market Research Associations, essentially has MRSI as one of its members, and they run the International Market Research Day to celebrate the research industry on 2nd of May every year. And around that time, for a couple of weeks, this global virtual conference happens, which is what's happening this time. The theme SMR has chosen this year, and for IMRD 23, which is the International Market Research Day 2023, is Research for a Better World. So Research for a Better World is designed to show how research can promote positive change on social good in the world around us today. And frankly, that brings me to ITC, an organization that I think everybody in India would agree has established itself on the principles of using data, research, insights, and analytics for its decision making. I think that's where the huge logical connection is between our industry and ITC. And as a result, one of the very, very, very large users of research, we couldn't find, companies who will be better partnering us on this SMR MRSI platform. And that's the biggest connection, I think, Hemant, between our industry, these bodies, and ITC, the organization that you represent, as the divisional chief executive of the foods division, which has become incredible in size, over the last 20 years or so. And with that, I'll directly dive into the topic. Hemant, first of all, thank you so much for joining us. Really thank you. We just asked you once and you said yes, and that says a lot of support to our industry, to the country, and to the global world of research. So thank you so much for that. I think the topic, let me say the topic first, because that will play out through the next 45 minutes or so, and then I'll give the reason why that topic is important. So it's the ITC Journey, a century-old conglomerate transforming to create a better world, is how we kind of look at it. And when we started writing the intro for this, we said that making the world a better place is usually a challenge for large legacy organizations. And why we say large legacy is that ITC is 100 years plus old, I think 110 years plus, and it is large. Its last turnover that I know is $8 billion US with a market cap of 66 billion. So that's how large the company is, and that gives us a sense of how much a company like this can do when it kind of really believes in this. And for the audience we have here in India and the rest of the world, let me just call out what ITC has done in terms of really the do good, better world stand that we find very, very important today. It stands out as an exemplar in sustainability. It is the only company in the world to be water, carbon, and solid waste positive for more than a decade. And what we want to hear from you, Hemant, today, in this company which has been around for 110 years, is it started as the Imperial Tobacco Company of India Limited. That's how the name started off, and it went into the India Tobacco Company, later on, some 50-60 years later on, and then now it is ITC, diversified into FMCG, hotels, packaging, paperboard, agarbatti, special papers, agribusiness, and much more. And this real journey, I think, has been fueled by one of the core objectives of the company, which is, and that's why I think we are having this forum with you, which is a triple bottom line. You know, a lot of corporates have a financial bottom line, and it's very, very important to us. ITC has always believed in a triple bottom line: economic, environmental, and social. And I think today more than any time else, we realize the corporates need to play these roles for the world around us to really kind of keep going and thriving and prospering. So let me just start with that, Hemant. You know, what's the great example of this triple bottom line that ITC plays on, you know, and maybe a feature story on how economic, environmental, and social, you know, issues have been met side by side and parallelly by this wonderful organization.
Thank you, Prasun, and a very good evening to all those who are on the call. I'm really delighted to be here, and thank you to MRSI and to SOMAR for inviting me. Prasun, you mentioned that I agreed in one go. The fact of the matter is that, you know, we are large users of research, and therefore research is very powerful in my organization. So when the research team makes a request, I have to make sure that I say yes, and I yield to the request quickly because they're very, very important to us.
Thank you.
Both MRSI, SOMAR, market research is very, very dear to me too. And, you know, and I believe a lot in consumer insight, consumer work, data. And that's something that is true for ITC as well. And so it's a delight to be here. You have picked a topic which is very close to ITC's heart. And I think what I'm going to be sharing about ITC is because there are a large number of people who've been, you know, making that difference, right? I'm just kind of telling you some of the stories that are they're part of ITC and what we are really proud of, right? And I think, and in today's, as you very rightly said, the whole aspect of environment is becoming, you know, business critical, right? It's now future of business is destined in terms of what and how the entire climate change can happen. And of course, ITC built this up many years, a couple of decades back. But I think today it's come closer to home. All of us are experiencing it. We have seen, you know, if I were to look at, you know, we are large business in packaged food. We have a brand called Ashirwad, Atta business. And we saw in the last 2 years itself how the wheat crop, which was always assumed to be about 100 odd million tons, it suddenly just when the crop is ready, it becomes either too hot. That was last year's story. And this year it started to rain, right? We've seen that in, you know, the Texas freeze that happened. And, you know, you may think it happens in the US, but we buy there is a factory out there which makes metallocene, which is used for packaging material, and suddenly that supply chain kind of gets choked. We have a big factory in Bhadrachalam, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. And we knew that the water level, the maximum it could rise would be say 65 meter, and that's the way we had created a bund for that. And this, that 1 year suddenly it crosses that threshold, and then you have flooding that takes place. So this is real. And I think for us, we are, when we talk about being carbon positive, and I'll tell you a story about, the carbon positive that we have been for more than 17 years. And it started because it is embedded into the business, right? We are India's largest paperboard manufacturers. And we've been in that business for, many years. And one of the challenges that we realize is from a supply chain perspective, the key ingredient that you need is the raw material that you need is wood pulp. And most of the wood pulp coming into India was being imported from, Scandinavian countries, which is a outflow of foreign exchange from an India perspective. So there is an economic impact. There is an outflow of foreign exchange. It's become more expensive. You are relying on the vagaries of that supply chain. So how is it that you can actually work in terms of building and growing trees in India, which can be used for wood pulping? And then you realize that actually you can grow the trees, but you need the right kind of trees because you need those fibers that can get into, making. So then our research comes into being. So we have a full, life science technology center. Our scientists work in terms of developing the right kind of clones that would grow in that area, which is close to your factory, because otherwise transporting wood is going to be very expensive. So now you develop the clones, and now you need to farm it somewhere. Now who's going to farm? Who's going to take that risk? And in that area, incidentally, you would not, if you look back into history 20 years back, it was a Naxal dominated area. And Naxals happen when people don't have employment. and therefore there were a lot of tribals over there. So our team go to the, and tribals were doing one farm, they were doing this farming which they do once in a year. So like, the subsistence farming is taking place. We go to them and we say, why don't you plant trees, right? You farm trees. And after 4 years, these trees will be ready. It's like a crop. We will buy that tree, from you. You can sell it, of course, to anybody. You don't have to sell it to us. These are the free saplings. And we, somebody takes the first initiative and says, okay, fine, let me try it. He allocates a little bit of land. And after 4 years, this crop is ready. And he suddenly finds that, there's a buyer waiting for it to buy it. And there's a story that stays with me because this person was interviewed. He's a tribal, right? He had no regular income, right? And he's interviewed after 4 years when he gets the first time he sees this money in his hand. And you ask him, okay, what are you going to do with this money? He says, this was a good experience for me. I'm going to buy some more land, right? So that I can plant some more trees. So we said, damn good, it is very good. So your economic business model that you're looking at is making a difference to both, us as well as to that person. And he said, the second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to send my daughter to school. Now, that is what happens in terms of changing livelihood, right? So when we talk about this triple bottom line, it is not only about the economy, it is also about the environment, and it is also about the change that you can bring in the society. And today, if I were to tell you the number of trees that was then and today, there have been close to 1.4 billion trees that have been planted, which is more than the population of our country, right? So that is the way, because soon it becomes an economic opportunity, right? People will see that, and therefore the entire livelihood changes. When people will have the money, there is education, right? The next generation comes up, then you start, your ambitions change. And I think that's a wonderful story. That, and at the same time, because of so many trees getting put up, there's a whole, the forest aspect completely changes, right? So you can, you have, better water, you have better soil erosion gets stopped, you have the whole carbon positive story that is coming in because of the number of trees that are getting planting, right? So I think that's a very interesting example, if I may, of the whole triple bottom line.
No, that's incredible, Hemant. We are talking about the joy of the father that he can send the child, to school today, which he couldn't. But think about this Naxal-dominated area, and when, in the next 5, 10, 20 years, we'll have women educated across that area. What will it do for the next decade? I think is the other thing. We are very happy about today, but the downstream of this is incredible, as to where this will go. Let me. I picked up, an article on, and this is there on, a lot is happening around the green millets, that ITC is doing, and I picked up an article which was tying millets to the triple bottom line of ITC and ITC's objectives, and it's a very, very, Indian, homegrown, very old, crop. I mean, there are modern, crops like that like quinoa, etc., that come in the Western world, but this is a little bit like the yoga that's come out of India, and can you elaborate a little bit about that story? Because I heard there are multiple plays on that, and it kind of goes to the center stage of the ITC triple bottom line objectives.
Absolutely, Prasun, and I think I'm glad you've asked this question. It is the International Year of Millets. This was, the UN has made the International Year of Millets. There is a lot of push from the government of India as well to how do we make sure that more and more people, both in India as well as abroad, get exposed to the value proposition of millets. Now, what are millets? Millets are actually grains which have been growing, for many years before. And in fact, before we started moving towards wheat and rice, these are very hardy crops. They require the least amount of, water, right? And therefore, from a climate positivity perspective, right, this is something that needs less water. At the same time, it's got the quality of the grain in terms of the minerals, in terms of the protein. It's actually gluten free. So today there's a lot of people have discussing about gluten free. Now this is which is a naturally gluten free product, and in a lot of places, because it was never seen as something that people wanted to buy, actually the farmer was not even investing in putting huge amount of fertilizer. So a lot of that is also naturally organic. So here you have a product, right, which is nutritionally dense. It's got a lot of benefits in terms of the health and nutrition aspect. In terms from a climate perspective, also it uses a less amount of water. Now, how do we actually make it more used? I think that's the challenge, and therefore ITC started this whole ITC's Mission Millet, which is on 3 dimensions. One is, how do we make sure that the farmer can learn how to improve the productivity of the millet? So, which is our agribusiness that looks after. Then we have our hotel business, which has been taking this millet and developing so many recipes, right? And in fact, you go to any of our hotel, you will find many millet-based recipes. This is all about in terms of popularizing the product. The third is in ITC Foods, and we have been developing, and we launched our latest cookies, which are 100% millet-based cookies. Right? We're looking at, we're exporting it to the other market. We're creating the whole market campaign around in terms of how do we build that awareness around, this millet. So I think you took an example of quinoa. I think Peru had done a phenomenal job as a country. And today everybody believes, and I think from a nutritional benefit perspective, if anything, millets would be very similar, if not better, in certain dimension. The millets there are many of them. There is jawar, there is bajra, there is ragi. Some of them have been used. They're part of local diet. Like ragi is very popular in Karnataka, for instance. And we have created a multi-millet product. So we are going to be launching a multi-millet atta in the very near future. So this is how we are looking at in terms of building the usage of it. And we believe that internationally, you make multi-grain bread, you can have multi-millet bread. So you get the benefit you have pasta, you can have regular pasta, you can have millet-based pasta. So we believe that this Mission Millet form, and in fact, the government of India has called this product Shri Anna, right? It's like the food of God. And I think that concentrated push by the government, by the industry, by consumers, and we've been doing tracking on social listening, Prasun. The kind of question that were coming 2 years back, right? My own team was not very sure, should we do on millets? Nobody knows about it. But I think there's conversation every day. I must thank all the newspapers, the media, right? They're talking a lot about it. So I think there's a movement which is happening around millet, and which is very, very exciting. And I think all of us can contribute to make this something big, and it'll become an India story.
Yeah, and that's where the virality of some of these new technologies and digital platforms come in. It just kind of blasts out into a bigger play, and more people get involved. And I mean, I wonder what's it done to the farmers, because millets used to happen a lot in Deccan, which was always a very difficult terrain from an agriculture standpoint. And ITC has been very supportive of the agriculture economy, in many ways. And we know today how much happens on farmers' livelihoods, the farmer debts we see, and the real challenge there. So I think that is one of the biggest things I would say from a very social standpoint that we've all visibly seen ITC support, which is the whole agri world and the farmers' lives. And I don't know what this millet story has done to farmers. I'm sure it's done a lot. And we've done other stuff like e-chopals, etc., which I'm sure we'll talk about. But it's a big one, I think, is this whole livelihood creation and the uplift of the farmer story. Hemant, I don't know if you want to add any more around that.
No, so I think we will come to the chopal story, because I think millet is a story that is still starting. I think as I mentioned, it needs less water. It also is a very hardy crop even in terms of heat. So it's like with the climate change happening, I believe in the future this is a crop that will stand. So it's a naturally protective to the climate solution, in a manner of speaking. So yeah, and that is there, and I think we'll cover the chopal story later whenever you want.
Yeah. No, absolutely. No, certainly. So in fact, I mean, maybe we should pick it up. I mean, one of the dimensions that I think today companies are doing is they're leveraging the modern platforms of technology, digitization a lot, and I'm guessing with what little I've seen of ITC that ITC is also moving very fast on using digital tools and digitalization, and perhaps it is using towards creating a better world as well. And again, while there is economic leverage out of the digital world, if there's something that also does the other two parts, the environmental and the social, I think that's an incredible story. And eChopal was always built with that premise in mind. So maybe let's spend a little bit of time on the eChopal story and see what are the manifestations of that that's happened, and then we'll move into other areas.
Thanks. I think ITC, this particular initiative, or eChopal initiative, a couple of, I think 96, 98, when we started the whole journey, it started because at one level we are we believe we are a agri company, right? Because a lot of what we sell, whether it is even in, so our agribusiness is a large producer of a large exporter of soya meal, and the soya was, and for that you need the soya part of it. And then we found that there are a lot of challenges in, as far as the rural farmer is concerned. A lot of them are small farm holdings, right? There is a lot of high post-harvest loss that takes place, or the farm yields may be suboptimal, right? Because you expect this is what will come out of it. Limited access to formal credit
Yes.
to the farmer, or even in terms of market linkages, right? I produce it, where do I sell it? And this whole Chopal model was created where you are empowering the local producer to actually certify the quality and sell to ITC and get immediate cash for the same thing. Right? And when he's certifying the quality, he's saying, okay, how are you going to decide what is good quality, bad quality? Because we would pay for quality, right? Unlike, when you're going into the normal market, you have to, you pay whatever the market rates are in terms of MSP, if it's an MFC product, or, whatever the trading date would be. So it's like, imagine a farmer. He picks the produce, puts it into a truck, comes to the comes to a place where the transaction is going to take place. Now, at that day, if the price is little low, he has no choice, right? Because he's already taken the effort and he's already there. Now, imagine it's information imbalance. If he had known that if he wants to sell it, say, at 21 rupees, and he knows the market rate is at 20s, and I want to wait for a few days, let me see what happens, right? He doesn't have that choice. Once he reaches, he has to load it because he has to go back, right? The whole payment structure also, there can be, some losses that may take place if the payment doesn't take properly, right? And you have to see that there's a big gap between the buyer and the seller, right? The buyer is way stronger than the seller. Then, when you look at in terms of quality, how do you make sure what is the information to give so that the productivity of his crop can be better the next year? What is the soil that he has? What is the kind of fertilizer it specifically needs? Because everything is not the same, right?
Yes.
All these anomalies were actually seen by ITC to say, how do we kind of remove them? How do we educate them, give them the information, let them make it better, create a platform where they can come, they can be sure that the payment is correct, they can be sure. So we actually, in those era when there was no digitization, a lot of your people on the call may not know the world before mobile phones. We had put up VSAT. If you remember, VSAT was the only source of.
Yes.
So we had internet connections to the villages in early 2000, and where we would give them the information of what are the market rates, what is the climate practices. So that was then. But now is the era, as your question is now, the era of digitization. So we have actually converted and we have moved into into what we're calling it the ITC Mars, which is a digitized version of Chopal with many more features that are coming in thanks to the improvement in technology. We give them advisory in terms of disease management, pest management. We give them advice in terms of what are the kind of inputs available, what are the prices of inputs available. We are able to actually connect the seller onto that platform so that they can get the best rate. Just imagine that, like, if he wants to buy his Amazon, in a manner of speaking, right? When you got some output that has been produced, how you want to sell the outputs, what are some of the other services. So we actually pulling a lot of services like credit. So it's not that we are giving credit, we are getting big banks into it. We're getting agri producers who want to sell tractors, for instance, or want to sell farm implements, somebody who wants to sell a fertilizer. All of them are coming into that one platform, right? And giving full I would say empowering that farmer to decide for himself what he would like to do. Now, and the other thing that is very interesting is, because of digitization, you can actually give specific input to a specific individual, right? Which would have been a little difficult when in the era when we had put up the Chopal, the computer, or created the Chopal, which was for a full village. Now you're able to give actually customized solution to each farmer. So this is something that we're targeting almost 10 million farmers to be on roll in the next 5-7 years, and it's a big project that ITC is doing. We have a separate team driving this whole effort, and it's big investment by the organization.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I'm sure the income effects of this on farmers has been, staggering, and the point, Hemant, is that this started off long time back, started much before the digitalization era we are talking about today, and ITC had the vision and the foresight to start this off that time, using technology of those days in very innovative ways. That's the really the biggest thing to kind of appreciate in this. And I mean, I have linkages to my village, and I know the point that we were making earlier, that even a week's plus minus of the rains can completely change the crops completely. I mean, if it's supposed to be on the 3rd week of May and that happens on the 4th week of May, productivity is down by 40% or whatever it is, and it just creates complete mayhem for the entire farming and the agri community. So this is incredible information for them to act on and play in real time. I think I want to just kind of shift gears a little bit into more mainstream in terms of livelihood creation, because that's again on the social side of the objective that we have. It's a really big one, and we again hear stories about what ITC is trying to do on livelihood creation. You've talked about some of this as a reference to these, but anything you think is really compelling that we need to think about in terms of livelihood creation, and especially again we talked about digitization, but maybe an era before that, but mechanization, using machines, using tools, can also get huge productivity lifts and create goodness of economic value, but goodness of social value, with downstream effects. So anything from that side, Hemant, if you would want to talk to
Yeah,
us about.
I'll talk about that, but I thought I'll briefly also cover one more aspect, which I think is, it's very relevant in Indian context, may not be that relevant in some of the other countries which is on as far as water is concerned. Right? I think I want to share with you about the work that we do as far as water conservation is concerned. Right? And I think again, what if you go back into history, you will remember there are a lot of these tanks that exist, right? Because India, a large part of agri is rain fed, right? So when it rains, the water has to be stored, right? They get stored in these tanks, right? These are big ponds or big, The challenge that happens over the years is that these tanks get silted. So silt
Yes.
formation takes coming in. So now the depth of the tank becomes very small. So therefore the holding capacity comes down significantly. So now that's a challenge. Now what is the solution? So the solution is very simple, right? You go and dig the tanks, you desilt them. So how do you go about doing that? And we realize that again, if you want agri to quality to be good, you need water, right? Now if you simply go and say that I'm going to spend the money and do everything and do it like a CSR work, it is possible that it may not get maintained. So the way the model that we developed working with our NGO partners was that we said about 50% of this investment will be made by the corporate, 50% of the investment has to be made by you. Now the question is that the farmer said, but I don't have the money to spend this. We said, no, you don't have the money, but you have the the manpower. So you have to do the physical activity, let the farmers come together of the village, right? And they take their effort to desilt it. We will spend in terms of infrastructure, because tomorrow you want to do some bricklaying, you want to make sure that there's not too much of water leaching that is taking place. And therefore that's how this model works, right? It's like a full-fledged model. And we made one difference is in a large number of places we created a committee which is supposed to then manage the water going forward. Because now when the water is there, now how should it get distributed? Inside the village. So you leave behind a kind of a group which are empowered, and we wanted most of them to be run by women. Because for ITC, women empowerment is a very important part. We believe that the Indian economy will only change when the women empowerment, women literacy, all that comes into play. And I think everybody would recognize and agree with that. So this is one example where you actually create women who are who are responsible for that place, and they create the team, and then and then they look at the whole water sharing. And today we have some 25,000 tanks have got, in fact, there's a, unfortunately, I can't show a video, but it would have been a beautiful video. I'll send that later. In terms of when you see that, with a drone showing the amount of water that kind of gets, conserved, because otherwise it was all kind of flowing somewhere onto it, and then that can get, reused. So I think that's a very, very important part of what happens. And shifting the second response to
and Hemant, I think just I think the point is, in essence, what we have done, and this is a very hot topic for the last few years, this whole inclusion, diversity, women, in the corporate world and what they can bring in the corporate world. I think it's a very big topic. What we have done here very smartly is introduce this management practice into the rural world, where there are so many women and many of them are not working in that sense. But we've harnessed that women power and introduced management practices in these, hundreds and hundreds of villages. I think that's what we have done. Folks on the call, just one quick call out before Hemant comes in is that please post your questions. There's a question box, as you can see on the grid. So post your questions. I'll try to pick up those questions and place them back to Hemant. But yeah, Hemant, please continue on. Yeah, incredible effort on this women empowerment. Yeah.
From the women empowerment part of it, and I'll cover in two parts. One is what we do within ITC directly, as well as what we've been doing in terms of women livelihood, empowering women across the ultra poor category. So one is we have this agarbatti business, which is incense sticks, right? And incense sticks are mostly hand rolled, right? So typically what happens is that you take the material which gets stuck onto the stick, and you burn the stick. That's what an incense stick is. And now this process of doing it by hand rolling is the way it used to be. And people would get about 2 kg and in a day, and they would convert it, and they get paid by how much they are able to convert from that masala, as it is called, to the dough and into the finished product. So we worked on in terms of simple technology, right, which is in terms of it was like a foot pedal technology, where people could come and suddenly their productivity moved up from 2 kg a day to about 8 kg, right, 8 kilogram that you can do, and therefore your earning capacity actually increases significantly. And they would come and so it's like a one more income that the family is able to get, which is important, right? They could come, they sometimes the kids could also come. We might have had some crash somewhere, and now we are moving in terms of even more technology, which we can actually convert even more from 8 kg to maybe say 30 kgs and stuff like that. So that's one big dimension that happens. The second, this is a story which is coming in from Sihor, which is this was a woman whose husband, she had 3 children. Her husband he was a truck driver. He had an accident, or he committed an accident, and therefore he was behind bars for a few years. So the family actually threw this lady out, right, and said, sorry, we can't look after you, and she's got 3 kids. And then the work that we were doing, we're looking at in terms of giving seed capital, right, and to give skill training. And we did skill training in terms of teaching beauty, like a beautician, right? Or how do, now this is in a village, right? And this is a great example of what is happening in India, even in villages, or India and Bharat. The beauty salon, yeah, I know in metros and big towns is full of it, but it is not limited. The aspirations of Indians is the same anywhere you look at. So this is an aspiration to look beautiful. Why not? And there is a skill training that has been given to this lady. And today this lady has set up her own beauty clinic. It's like a shop. She started being called when people were getting married to, dress them up and to see how the jewelry needs to be put up. And then, some basic. And now she sets up her own shop. So this is something very, very interesting, very, very, very heartwarming, because you're able to do, about 100,000 rural women have been benefited through various skill training and empowerment. And the cost that you want to give as a seed capital is about 150 rupees. It's like one burger, right? It's not too much. But the process of how do you execute it, right? A lot of people have the ideas, but to be able to execute it and to make sure that it is actually happening and it doesn't remain like, some words over there. And that is where I think where ITCs and ITCs professionalism, right? It's the same focus that would be there, whether I'm making a great product or I have to do something from a rural empowerment perspective or farmer perspective, because it's the same professionals who are working onto it with the same level of commitment. So I think that is quite interesting.
Yeah, and I think that's what goes back to that, the triple bottom line ethos, because all these three tracks are running parallelly, Hemant. So business leaders like yourself as well are taking all three equally seriously and moving the organization forward and moving society forward. And this Agarbatti example, we are saying from 2 kgs to 8 to 30 maybe in the future. So we're talking about a 4x, 10x. I don't know. I mean, any amount of regular productivity growth of 15%, 20% is a different horizon, versus here 4 times, 8 times we're talking about. I can't even imagine the downstream effects of economic, social, etc. on this. It's really, really incredible. I guess maybe I'm going to get to another aspect of it, which is a very, again, I talked about topic in the global world. Lots of discussions in the last 5-10 years even on this is plastics and renewables and recyclables and all of that stuff. And it's not an easy problem to tackle, and people have their own thoughts about plastic and recycling. Anything you would say that's been done which kind of tackles that and creates some positive, better world outcomes from there? If you can just tell us. Yeah.
So I think that's quite an interesting story, and how the story started with my paper business, our paper business requiring more, because you can recycle paper, right? So you needed used paper that you can reuse it again, because you can put it back into the pulping machine and make the second round of it. So now how do you get that? So we started going into, and it started in Hyderabad, now it works in Bangalore, we're doing it in many other markets as well. So you went house to house and you say, please segregate your items so that we can so you teach segregation so that they can be recycled and reused, right? When this process was happening, we found that we're actually collecting a lot of plastic. Right now, what do you do now, since that you have collected it and you needed only the paper, now what do you do with the plastic? And that's when we said, okay, plastic is supposed to be bad. But I think plastic is bad only if you don't, are not creating a process where you can actually recycle it, because plastic is also recyclable, right? Provided you can collect it and segregate it, right? So we actually, this was again another women empowerment project, right? Women would go, they would train houses how to collect, they would bring it back, they would separate it, and then they'll be able to sell it. So you're actually creating, so that once it is segregated, there are enough buyers who can buying and repurpose that. Today we are doing. I'm saying, okay, let me first complete that. So that's how it kind of started, this WOW program, as we call it. What we found was that not only is there a virtuous cycle that is getting created, but the interesting thing was that we found that actually the places were becoming cleaner, right? And this is a project which is done in Muzaffarpur in Bihar, right, in a certain ward, right? And I've seen those pictures and what it was before, and now suddenly the whole place becomes clean. Because I think with hygiene and cleanliness is that if the place is not dirty, nobody wants to dirty it. If the place is dirty, everybody kind of adds, more onto it. So this became a very shining example of, it's become, healthy, hygienic, as well as the whole plastic gets reused. And today for ITC, we are plastic positive, in the sense that we collect much more plastic directly. And this is actually physical plastic that is getting done. It's not that somebody else is collecting and probably we're just paying for it. So that's a process that started, and today it's a big thing. I think it can be pursued by many companies. It's not, none of these things that I'm talking about are so IP protected that nobody can do it. I think everybody
and it just reminds me about a story from my own kind of travels 10 years back. This is 10 years back. I used to live in Africa for a little bit of time, and one of those times I went to Rwanda to do some gorilla tracking, and the moment I entered into the airport, I had some plastic packages, etc., and this is a plastic free country. And then as I kind of understood more about Rwanda, and we know our association with Rwanda, it's a very, very different, difficult association, right? And that country 10 years back was plastic free, and the president of the country, every week, one day, he would himself indulge in making sure cleanliness and plastic freeness is happening. And that goes back to your point. If somebody observes that is the environment, then everybody follows that environment. And I will never forget this story, from a country like Rwanda, long time back, and how clean that country is, Hemant, I can't even tell you. But incredible stories, I think, like this, when somebody takes the leadership to do something, I think that's the lesson for us.
Rwanda can be plastic free. I don't think we can be plastic free. We need to educate people to segregate.
Yes.
The biggest challenge, right? In fact, we do a project with our brand GP, and GP also has this project called ITC Better World, where we are encouraging, because we believe the generation alpha, right? They are much more, that's what our research is also showing, much more conscious about in terms of environment. So we have gone there, we've gone to schools, right? And we've told them, why don't you go and collect the plastic, right? They come, they collect the plastic, there's some competition that takes place. And then we convert these plastics into desks, right? The same plastic gets collected, that gets repurposed into into school desks, which are gifted or given to lower income schools, right?
Yes.
And this is, we work with government of Karnataka, and it's been very, very successful, right? Because there is a pride, because that school kid believes that I have contributed for a desk in some other school, right? At the same time, you are sending the the knowledge in terms of how to segregate, how to repurpose and stuff like that. So that's a very good successful model that we are working on.
Right. You were going to tell us, I think I just cut you. You were going to tell us something else on another story. I think you just mentioned.
What I was talking about. And I think the other point that I must make is that we are now looking at this whole sustainability 2.0, right? Because there was a assembly that the work we talked about, water positive, carbon positive, that integral. But in fact, our chairman himself is driving this whole sustainability 2.0 agenda. The reviews that happen are quite intense to make sure. And therefore, in fact, one of the things that we're doing is this whole climate risk assessment, which is unique. I don't know how many people even know what is climate risk assessment. We're looking at what can happen in a decade, in 2 decades, or in 3 decades. And therefore, how will some of those assessments are showing that big cities like Chennai and Bombay, a lot of it will get the seawater is going to come quite serious, right? And therefore, what are the supply chain aspects that can take place? How do you look at? We are working a lot in terms of what we call climate smart agriculture, which is how do you make sure that is, when we say weather smart, so you're actually the kind of the seeds that you're using, they can be more hardy, they can be hybrids which can work despite the weather changing. How do you look at water smart, right? So therefore they need less water, so I think there's a lot of in terms of nutrient smart in terms so you're looking at micronutrients coming in or nano fertilizers coming in. So there's a lot of work that is being driven in terms of when we look at sustainability 2.0 going forward.
Yeah. And just like many of the efforts started 20 years back, I think, that's where the vision of ITC comes in. We are thinking 20 years, 30 years down the line, what's going to happen. And, the e-chopal, the example you gave, which started 20 years back, we can see the effect of that happening today. No, so this is, quite incredible. I guess, coming maybe a little bit more closer to this world of data and research and all of that stuff we do. Hemant, I remember a conversation with you a while back, and ITC has been a lot about micro targeting, creating products, communication, packaging, distribution chains at the geography level and target level, and this has become common across companies. But I think ITC was one of the first ones that started off. And I remember some work with you where we used this, and you referred to it some time back. That's why I'm bringing it up, of these link studies that Kantar does, and I think it's 10 years, not 10, maybe 20 years back, we did this, looked at hundreds of link studies that we do, which is advertising pre-testing, and looked at the data to understand how does advertising work in India or micros of India. I mean, micro targeting wasn't a theme at that point of time, but and we presented to you some, like I said, 15, 18 years back. So maybe, I don't know if you want to kind of talk about anything where data has helped some of the business decisions, and this one came to my mind, so I thought I would reference it.
Many. Yeah. I think and I still remember that's one of these very interesting presentation, because I think you were using communication and you were actually seeing in how Bengal behaves differently than Bombay, how Delhi looks at communication in a very different way, and that actually help in terms of today we also therefore to that extent make different very clearly different ads for different regions, because that's most important. In fact, not only that, I think it's moved a lot even in terms of product, right? Because the product, the taste, it's end of the day, I'm in the food business, and the food kind of varies every 200 kilometers. That's what people keep on talking about. So why should the the atta that I'm selling, why should it be the same everywhere across the country? So in fact, when we launched, we used to go, we had 3 segments, north, east, and south, right? Today, as the business has become larger, now we have different products. For Rajasthan, we are finding the requirements are different requirements in UP, different requirements. And I think what happens is that it's sometimes you may know it, but you can't do it because you may not have the back end supply chain to drive that.
Correct.
And so today we build that supply chain to be close to the market and be able to drive that customization, because that's you go to the consumer, you say, why are they not shifting from into packaged branded atta, and then you find that actually the way they are consuming the kind of atta they want, the kind of granulation it is, the kind of level of starch, it's a little different, right? And therefore you need to make sure that you are able to customize. So I think that, to me, about that customization, whether it is at the trade level, whether it is at the consumer level, is most important. And that's something that with digitization, I think communication get customized to an individual. I think it's maybe someday we'll have product which gets customized to an individual.
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, I remember seeing a palette study that was done by ITC a while back, which just showed how many different palettes exist, and that leads to obviously the product innovation that companies like yourselves do all the time. There are quite a few questions coming up, on the chat window. So I'm going to take a couple of those, Hemant, and they are connected and not so. But I think with you on the call, I'm sure all of us would love to hear your thoughts on it. So one of the questions that's come up from Ajit John is that, in which areas do you foresee ITC partnering the startup ecosystem in India? Something happening, in the works, but how can ITC help the startup ecosystem? Is a question that's come up.
I think no, that's Ajit, thank you for that question. Startup ecosystem, for instance, when we talked of the whole thing about the agri space, so there's a lot of startup work that my teams are working with the startup ecosystem over there. We continuously look at in terms of investing in startups, right? So there is a whole team that is looking at in terms of venture support. And when I'm saying investing, it is not just about the money part of it, but it's also in terms of we can give you some, whether it is product development support, whether it is in terms of research support, whether it is in terms of so there is we have a separate team which kind of looks at it. Work is happening. After some time we're looking at acquisition also. We've recently acquired a food health food startup called Yoga Bar, and it had reached a certain scale, so now this become part of ITC, and therefore we're going to build that. So I think Ajit, just to tell you, I am also a startup, right? Just that I'm startup in Bangalore, right? It was 20 years back or 22 years back now when we started saying we want to get into the foods business, right? We were not in food business. We had the wherewithal of the ITC's financial and the distribution part of it, but it was the corporate would call itself as a venture capitalist. That was the discussion internally, that we are the venture capitalists, you have to deliver. So and we've kind of got into different categories, over a period of time, and and today we are in like about 12-15 categories, but the last category we got into was 5 years back. So
in fact in these 20 years, the number of categories and product types that foods has gone into him, and from those early days of Sunfeast is just quite incredible, starting with biscuits, etc. And it is an example of multiple startups within the organization there. I think one question, and we've addressed some of this, but I'm going to come back to this because it's come up, is both on the supply chain side and then on the distribution side. ITC is very, very well known to work very closely on both of these. So just thinking about this Better World, Do Good, etc. Anything else you want to talk about, either from a distribution ecosystem you've helped the world around, or the supply chain? Any final thoughts, and then I'll take a couple more questions, and then we'll get closer to the call and time.
No, you take
and any
more questions. I'll come back to this answer. I think anything I'll start will take a longer time to respond. So we'll come to that later. Yeah.
Sorry,
We'll
Hemant.
go to
Yeah.
the next question. I think you can go to your next question. I'll come to this response a little.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the questions that's come up is, and again, some of our words kind of play from there. It's very I'm reading out the question from Rajshekhar. Very heartening to see so many initiatives taken by ITC. What's your take on brand purpose, brand values? Is this part of a bigger brand purpose? Is it important to integrate brand purpose into communication, position brands, and so on?
So I think firstly, we come from one philosophy from the ITC brand perspective, that business cannot succeed in societies that fail, right? I think that's a key ethos onto it. And the second important is that we always challenge the business to develop business models that can cover all the three pillars that I was talking about. Economic, environment, as well as. So the moment you're looking at that part of it, then the brands can also see in terms of how they can play a role, right? So I talked about GP in terms of the whole GP Better World, which was they picked up the whole plastic model and saying that how do we create higher degree of awareness around plastic usage, as well as in terms of repurposing the plastic and making these the plastic desks. So therefore that's another facet that EP has added to itself. Ashirwad is a brand which is around the whole purpose is around women empowerment, right? And they're working a lot in terms of skill development, right? We launched a whole campaign in terms of working with Hunar to say what are the kind of how do you empower women through any kind of skills. And of course, one is to focus at the rural level, which is what the CSR part of it that we talked about. But we also find that it's not only rural, it's also in urban India. There are a lot of women who have got the time now, or they believe that their recognition will only come in if we can feel that we are actually contributing to the family in any form. And therefore education in terms of whether it is cooking, whether it is setting up your own, and we tied up in terms of how can make a product which can be sold onto e-commerce. So we give that education as well. So there is a lot of different brands have to choose what exactly is from their purpose perspective, and then they pick it up.
Yeah, and Ashirwad is absolutely a great story on this, perhaps a perfect story on brand purpose. Connected to our industry, Hemant, this is a question from Shumik Roy, who I happen to know and works very closely with ITC. And his question is that from ITC's perspective, what should we, and you as a user of this data, we as the MR industry should invest in to best support, companies like ITC and in their growth for the next 10 years? What can we do as an industry to support your company and such others?
I think so. I think there is a lot that is evolving very fast from digitization perspective, right? And I think from the time when it used to take 2 months to get research done or consumer, whether it is product or whether it is communication or whether it is some kind of, I think that time has to shorten significantly, right? And we have to see in terms of how we can use that access to be able to reach out people. And I think to that extent, the job has become easier at one level, right? Because you can connect much faster. You can enter people's home just because through a Zoom call, right? And then therefore but the turnaround time therefore becomes most very important, because there is this whole demand for agility. You want to you can see the impact of whatever you do very, very quickly, right? And so to me, that is one big change that is taking place, and I just hope that the research world is also looking at from that perspective. The second area, of course, is the number of segments that are coming in, right? And I think that also becomes a challenge for the marketeer to how do you handle so many segments. You can maybe do it through communication. How we were just discussing about in terms of product, we could be discussing in terms of packaging. So that is something that where marketers are also struggling with that. So what is the solution that you as researchers can help us with? The third area which happens, which is more in terms of I think is it the Shomik from Kantar, right?
That's Yeah,
Thank you.
from multiple organizations, you know the Shomik that we're talking about, but yes.
Thank you for being on the call. You're a big source of information that we actually rely on, right? And particularly the panels that happen. Some of the panels, give good trends. Sometimes there is because it might be more expensive to expand the panel, and we understand that. So I think that's another partnership. That's an equal responsibility of marketers as well, right? To make sure that we are also investing together to make sure that the quality of data improves. I think the fourth area is, I think we all of us are very metro-centric, right? Prasun mentioned that he was brought up in a farm, but not a lot of us are not. I think the knowledge of Bharat, and which is where a big amount of consumption takes place. Probably that and how it is changing. I think we are a little, not completely off with that. I think that's and I'm saying I'm not. I'm saying it's equal responsibilities for us as marketers to know that who your consumer and how they're changing. So these are a few things that come to my mind. Shomik, I had not planned this answer, so yeah.
Yeah, I think you've kind of called out 4 or 5 things, all of them, equally compelling needs and challenges for our industry. Speed and quality doesn't have to compromise each other. Micro segmentation, what we can help with, quality of data, all of these are absolutely even more needed in the future as we get into this world of very, very large amounts of data use. I was talking about distribution and retail, and there's a very specific question, Hemant, that's come up, which I know ITC has been working on. So I'm going to pose that question. This is from Niladri Basu from Calcutta, where ITC is headquartered. What's your thoughts on moving onto a complete D2C business model?
Complete D2C?
D2C, yeah, a D2C business model, direct to consumer business model.
So I think, we have our ITC store, e-store, right, which is a D2C option, right? But I think as a marketer, my job is to make sure that my brands are available in any channel that the consumer will want to purchase from. If somebody wants to buy on quick commerce, it should be available. If you want to buy from your grocery store next doors, it should be available. If you want to directly order, it should be available. So we have to make sure that across platforms that our product is available is one. Second thing is, this also allows you to decide which SKU needs to be present where, because the consumer behavior, and I think that's another area, the shopper behavior is evolving, and it's very different, right? The same shopper, you and I as shopper, we behave differently when we are on quick commerce, we behave differently when we go into a modern trade store, we behave differently, and I think it's not the same. So I think that shopper behavior is one big area of knowledge improvement that we have to work on. So that's my view as far as D2C. I think D2C is fantastic when you're launching something very unique as a unique value proposition. You are able to get the data, you're able to see the response to the stimuli is much faster. You're able to see that individual who's bought it, so therefore the response of your inputs, variables, all that is much better. But end of the day, you can't do all your business on D2C. You finally, after some time, you'll need to go into mainstream. So yeah, but that's a good learning doing work.
Yeah. And there's lots of questions, Hemant. I think I'll take 2 and we will close from there. And both of these are, I think, good questions on this topic. So one is from Shuman Sharkar. He's saying that health has become such a big ethos for CPG companies in particular, and one of the big things that's been talked about is reducing sugar content. So is there anything around that that you folks are thinking about this whole story around sugar content reduction and
so
food and health?
So and I know where this discussion is coming from, and maybe it can take a lot more. I think yes, we should develop product which can use less of what can be called baddies into it. But the second thing is that it is about the quantity of consumption. What is the serve size? How much are we actually using? A normal adult is supposed to have 2000 calories, right? So you should have 2000 calories. Where will the calories come from? It will come either from carbohydrate, protein, or fat. Now carbs will be form of, you can have complex carbs, you can have simple carbs. You'll have your combination of both, right? So it finally comes down in terms of, are you using your portion control is happening or not, right? So otherwise, so there should be no sugar industry at all, right? right? So is sugar bad? Of course it's bad if anything is used in excess. Should so what is the total sugar, added sugar? People say maybe it could be 50 grams, right? So maybe 15 to 4, that 200 a kilocal in a day can come in from sugar. So yes, how do you get that? So I think it's a larger issue than just picking one aspect and say isme sugar jyada hai or this got much higher on sugar. Yeah, you please have only 1 spoon, right? But it adds, it's got some other benefits. So that to me is a balanced diet is the larger conversation rather than, yes, having said that, our brands am I continuously looking at in terms of how to look at reduced sugar in a drink that I'm drinking? Of course we are. Can there be solution looking at mixed with stevia? Can it be through, we are not using sugar-free versions until you're launching a sugar-free part of it. So there is a constant work that is happening, right? Sometimes, like if you look at biscuits, you need sugar because you can't make a biscuit without the sugar, because sugar is not just playing a role of biscuits. It's playing a role of getting the binding part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like everything else, there's a balance in what we do. I think that's the big message on this. Last question, Hemant, and again it comes back to the better world, do good thing, and you referred to this a few minutes back, so I'm going to use that question and then perhaps close from there. And thank you. Why do you think, and this is from Vinay Virwani, why do you think Gen Alpha is so concerned about sustainability?
Good question. That's a very, very good question.
Yes.
I think it's good because they're experiencing it right in front of their eyes, right? They're experiencing what is happening in terms of climate, vagaries that are taking place, right? There are things which you have never heard of which are happening. The education is taking place much more, right? It is being taught right from the beginning in the school. Probably they realize that the other generation will go away and the world will be left in their hands. So therefore they need to be more aware. And I think they can, they are playing a significant role, because when the child tells the parent this is what needs to be done, right? You should, years back we used to say that, stop at the traffic light, switch off your car, save on fuel. Today they're talking about, usage of, plastic, switching off electricity. I think it's a great work that is being done from an education perspective. So I think that's where the narrative is changing, and brands and companies and all have to make sure that if this is where the future is, we need to also be able to respond to that.
Yeah. Thank you, Hemant. I think we'll close the call. Just a couple of things I would say, and just the last stats I saw was roughly a third of the registration was from outside India, and including folks from the West, were part of the registration link that we saw, I think, earlier today. So a lot of this message is about this whole inspiring story that India and today's India and ITC as a real kind of, I think, face of India today is driving, and I'm sure these will not just inspire a lot of us in India, but inspire a lot of us around the world, around the Western world and the Eastern world. And like I said, you readily agreed to it, and ITC has always been a huge support to this industry. And I think a lot of the innovation we have done in this industry is because companies like ITC drive us hard to get into those innovations, and that makes the industry better, our industry better, and that hopefully helps clients, consumers, supply chain, distribution, all of these parts, hopefully get impacted in a good way. So really, really big thanks, Hemant. Again, evening hour, we just asked you and you said yes. Thank you so much for this. I just want to call out one last thing, which is, this year on the IMRD 2023, the SMR platform, MRSI has hosted 5 sessions. This is one of those sessions, and one more is coming up. And please check the MRSI website and LinkedIn on mrsi.co to see the other sessions that are there. But it's been extremely resourceful to see MRSI play such a big role in the SMR global platform. And just like India is shining everywhere, here in our industry as well. And it's thanks to, I think, companies like ITC, Hemant. I just want to call that out again. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prasun. It was a pleasure. Thank you for arranging it. And as I said, that a lot of what I have shared, or most of what I've shared, is based upon the kind of work that the ITC as an organization do. I was just kind of talking about it, but I'm really proud of what we do, and I'm glad that you gave us an hour. And look forward to being in touch, and wish you and Isomar a great week and a great year ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for listening in. Yeah, have a great day. Bye-bye.